and Jill, and it's just looking great. And it's going to be a fabulous event on Saturday. And then, of course, Sunday is the big mama. So we're going to have a great event then. I wanted to have two grants. One for the superstar of sponsorship solicitation, Tim Pearson. He has just been doing such an unbelievable job. And I got a call from him a day ago, and he has secured a sponsor for the concert. And we're going to have a really nice concert sponsor. It's going to be fabulous. So hats off Tim, and just an amazing job putting that together. And Ryan, who's doing everything pretty much, he's just going crazy trying to keep up with it all. But he's got an incredible job. He's re-energized the website and put all sorts of stuff together. So if you haven't been on the website lately, go look at it and refer people to it because it is just amazing. He's been doing marvelous work.
So I think it was last week Janine asked about how volunteers can sign up. And I said to look at the website, which I did, and I didn't see a place to send volunteers.
I asked Ryan about that. He hasn't answered that question for me yet either, but I know that we've got a software package that can be used, but we'll be talking about that tonight.
Okay.
And, we really need that volunteer sign up thing. I've got a need for at least 7 more. I've got 2 already signed up, and so we really do need to focus on volunteers for the event. So thank you for bringing it up.
Very good. I see Mr. Kidd.
Thank you. I wanted to brag on the fact that I had a fantastic weekend. My son made a presentation in Seattle, and he was scheduled on Friday, and he was scheduled on Monday for a presentation in Denver. So the time in between he spent here in Forest Grove and had the opportunity to go to the Habitat auction with us, and Christine and I had a great time entertaining him in Forest Grove for the time in between.
Very good. I see Janet Peters.
And I'm just going to punch my 3 punches for my 3 days of excellent clam digging. And they're really big, so if you can get out there, go.
Excellent. I think that's everybody. So I'm missing the name. There.
All right, and with that, we'll welcome our program. Dan Riordan joined the city's planning division as senior planner in 2008. Originally from Chicago, Dan came to Oregon in the late 1980s to attend graduate studies in the School of Urban Public Affairs at Portland State University. After attending Portland State, Dan held planning positions with the city of Salem, where he focused on downtown redevelopment activities. As senior planner for the city of Forest Grove, he managed preparation of the city's urban plan that will dedicate over $15 million in funds for projects in the downtown and along the Pacific Avenue corridor. The design work for the proposed 21st Avenue Festival Street is funded through the Urban Renewal Plan. When not cheering on the Seattle Mariners, he can be found taking his very exuberant yellow lab for walks. Please welcome Dan Riordan.
Thank you, Bryce. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to present this project to everyone today. I'm thrilled that you're interested in the 21st Avenue Festival Street. This has been something that's been in the pipeline for quite some time, as Richard may attest to. It actually goes back to the 2007 Downtown Resource Plan that looked at 21st Avenue as a possible festival street. And the reason why that was identified is that it has great views. On the one end, we have Pacific University here as the eastern anchor. And on the other end, you can see the Coast Range foothills. And so it's actually a great alignment for accommodating events and making it more of an outdoor recreation space for the downtown. So this project has been in development for quite some time, but with the advent of the Urban Renewal Plan going into place, we actually have some funding to start doing the design work. And so that's where we're at this point. And we are taking a survey. I know the cards say that the survey will be open until May 20th. We're actually going to keep the survey open until the end of this week. So if anyone wants to comment on the proposed design, I really encourage you to do that because we'd really like to hear your feedback. We're in the process right now of doing outreach to the downtown businesses who may be most affected by the project. The design project for the Festival Street was put on hold so we could complete a downtown parking study because one of the issues of concern is how the project might affect parking, and so that's something we really want to take a look at. So with that, I'll get into the presentation. I handed out hard copies for everyone to see, but I know it's a little bit difficult to read. But in good planning tradition, Okay, thank you. Well, I'm certainly used to technical difficulties during the pandemic and everything with trying to do these Zoom meetings and do presentations. And I will say it's really great to be able to do an in-person presentation. It's really nice to see people in person. So in any case, we're starting with the existing conditions. This particular slide shows the current configuration of 21st Avenue. It's basically a two-way street, as everyone knows. Has parallel parking on both sides of the street. In doing the design work, the street is being divided into separate zones. And so you'll see this throughout the different slides. There's the actual through way for the cars. There's a pedestrian through zone, an amenities curb zone. Think of that as a place where parklets can go in, outdoor dining, outdoor seating. There was a parklet in front of Belladonna's that served that purpose for outdoor dining during the pandemic. It's also an area where landscaping could go in. So everybody knows what 21st Avenue looks like. We've approached this project by dividing it into two segments. So the phase one would be 21st Avenue from the entrance of Pacific University to just past the intersection with Main Street. So we include the Main Street intersection and out to Pacific Avenue. The second phase would be the portion of 21st Avenue west of Main Street to A Street. And so there's a clear dividing line. Part of that is for sequencing construction if the project is built, and also for funding. So we looked at several options, tried to find some good examples of festival streets, how they've worked in other places. And this is a good example of a festival street kind of improvement, is accommodating traffic. And I do want to emphasize, if you take nothing else away from this presentation today, please know that 21st Avenue will not be permanently closed. We've been hearing a lot of comments about that. The only time that 21st Avenue would be closed would be during events. And hopefully if the project is built, we'll be able to accommodate the concourse as part of that event on 21st Avenue. But it'd be very similar to what occurs on First Wednesdays, when 21st Avenue is closed for the First Wednesday's Farmers Market. And for a while, the Farmers Market itself used 21st Avenue before relocating to Main Street. And so the purpose of showing this image is to show some of the landscape treatments, making it more friendly, having more greenery, street trees, more things to add visual interest to the area. So that was one of the Seattle neighborhoods on Bell Street. The other one is Kirkland Park Lane. And this is something that might be a better fit maybe for Forest Grove. And you'll see that the draft preferred design recommendation incorporates a lot of these elements. One thing in particular is the angled parking. That's something that we're looking at as well. It tends to slow traffic down. The other thing we're looking at is doing sort of the no curb design cross-section. So it'll be a continuous elevation for both the auto throughway parking and the sidewalk. That better suits festivals and events and seems to work pretty well in terms of making it more pedestrian oriented. So we looked at a couple of options for design. There's a one-way option where traffic would go one way both on the area of 21st Avenue from College to Main Street and from Main Street to A Street. The phase one area between College and Main Street would be one way going east, and then west of Main Street it would be one way going west. And that's just for traffic circulation and flow and looking at emergency access and those sorts of things. So there's a one-way option. The one-way option would basically result in a loss of parking, depending on how it's designed and how much angled parking is provided, of anywhere from 4 to 8 on-street parking spaces. And that's been a concern for the downtown businesses, the prospect of losing parking spaces. So at the same time we were doing this Festival Street design work, we were also doing a downtown parking study, which was just recently completed. And that study identifies some possible solutions for offsetting the loss of parking. And one is to strike the parking on Main Street, north of 21st Avenue. So in front of Diversity Cafe and Parlover in that area, which is largely unstriped, striping it and making the parking more efficient. And we might be able to pick up as many as 8 parking spaces doing that. We've also been looking at some opportunities for off-street parking, maybe reconfiguring the parking lot that the city owns at the corner of A Street and 21st. And so there are some ideas to help reduce the impact of parking because it is important. So there's also a two-way option. It's kind of self-explanatory. It would basically be the same type of traffic flow that we have today, but we would still have the amenity, curb zone, the flexible space where there would be parking, parklets, that sort of thing. So this just shows the cross-section for the angled parking area. The travel lane on 21st Avenue would be 13 feet. That's pretty standard, anywhere from 11 feet to 14 feet for the travel lane. It's pretty standard. There would be a 7-foot buffer zone between the traffic lane and the planter strip in the pedestrian through zone. The flex zone where parklets and other improvements could go would be 20 feet. It would be where the essentially could be used for angled parking when 21st Avenue is not being used for festivals. So there's also a one-way option looking at parallel parking. It's not quite as efficient. It does allow for larger travel lane, so the cars would have more area to go through. The flex zone would be much smaller. It would be 8 feet instead of 20 feet, so it would be a much smaller cross-section. Okay, now this is Bryce, are you here? Probably operator error. So getting into I'll call this the draft recommended design solution or design alternative or design option. It's because we're still trying to gather more public input, more input from the businesses. But we would still keep it under this recommended alternative, 2 phases, again divided by Main Street essentially, with a one-way going eastbound on 21st Avenue with angled parking. We also have angled parking between Main Street and A Street, and a parallel parking west of A Street. It would be one way going in the westbound direction. This is the alley. The alley would still be two-way between Main Street and A Street. And this was looked at as being the most efficient design solution, the most pedestrian-friendly, an efficient way to accommodate parking, but also have a good flexible space for outdoor events, for the parklets. There's a possibility that the parklets may remain even after events are not happening. So it provides much more flexibility. So getting into the costs, and you'll see, I'll wrap up with this, you'll see there's a wide variation. It's broken out by phase. And the phase one, the low cost is about $1.5 million for the improvements. And the high cost is just shy of $2 million. The difference in the high and low range is the type of materials used for construction. The low-cost option would just have asphalt, kind of similar to what you see today. It could be pigmented asphalt, but it would be asphalt, versus more decorative pavers, bricks, that sort of thing. And so that adds to the variation of the cost. The other thing I want to point out is because this is a conceptual design at this point, there's a lot of contingency built into this cost estimates, about 25%. And so as the design gets refined, that'll be reduced and we'll get better cost estimates. So the phase 1 design would be anywhere from $1.5 to $2 million conceivably. The phase 2 cost is a little bit higher because the section is a little bit longer. It would be about $2 million to about $2.7 million. So the next question would likely be, well, how would you pay for all of this? And this project is within the city's urban renewal district. The urban renewal district includes the downtown Forest Grove area, as well as the Pacific Avenue, 19th Avenue couplet that goes out to Quince Highway 47. So that would be a likely funding source for this project. The Urban Renewal Agency is repaying a loan to the city related to the construction of the Jesse Quinn Apartments project. So once that loan gets repaid, then that would free up some funding for the Festival Street project. But in addition to the Urban Renewal Program, other potential funding sources include the city's street fund, which is used to improve and maintain streets. The transportation development tax, that's a fee assessed to each individual residential building permit and commercial permits that are issued for development. That can be used for this type of project. We need to make some storm drainage improvements on 21st Avenue, so the city's storm fund could be used to pay for some of that. And then this is being considered an amenity to the downtown, and hopefully will attract people to the downtown. That's really what this is all about. Bringing people downtown, staying longer, spending money, visiting downtown Forest Grove. And so there's not saying that this funding source would be dedicated to the project, but it would be eligible, and that's the transient lodging tax that would be another possibility for funding a portion of this project. So depending on what the city council approves, if anything, we'll refine the design, refine the cost estimates, and go back to the city council with a possible funding package. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But we're much further along than things were back in 2007 when the concept was first identified. So things are progressing. And with that, I'll ask if there are any questions. Hopefully you have some. Sir?
The transit lodging tax has stipulations that have to be abided by from a statewide standpoint. And I'm assuming that that portion that you're talking about is going to come from the capital projects portion of 30%. That's allowed administratively?
Correct, yes, from capital piece of it. Yes, sir.
When you start phase 1, about how long does it take to finish phase 1, then you go to phase 2? How long does that take, roughly estimates?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And actually, we're putting together a memo to lay out the construction process with the idea of trying to create as little disruption downtown as possible. For the phases, it would probably take anywhere from about 9 to maybe 12 months for each individual phase. It would be staggered. And the reason it might take that length of time is so that construction wouldn't be continuous during that time. It would be kind of on and off so that the street can remain open and be less impact to the businesses. And so we're looking at, for each phase, probably about a year each for completion.
When is it going to be reviewed by city council?
So once the survey is complete, and we've tallied all of those results, and we've been able to meet with the downtown businesses, probably, we haven't scheduled a date yet, probably be August, probably be the earliest.
Will there be alternative plans for the deliveries to those businesses that are there? So for transportation of trucks that
Could accommodate. That's a great question. So yes, and that's already kind of an issue already downtown. The freight delivery and also trash collection. That's another consideration. And so the improvements that would remain, so like parklets and things like that, needs to be looked at in terms of still being able to accommodate truck loading and unloading. And there may be still some double parking that takes place like it does now. But yeah, that's something that will need to be accommodated.
With something like this, you're gonna end up with more maintenance. You can have like parklets and stuff like that. So is there, the city's talking about who's gonna be taking care of the maintenance of this?
Yeah. And in addition to this project, the Public Works Department is looking at the decorative crosswalks, which are starting to get worn and need to be replaced. And so there's some maintenance issues there as well. So that's definitely being looked at in terms of which city department is responsible for it and how it's funded. And there are maintenance funds. It's mostly gas tax funds that are used for maintenance of the street. The one issue in particular that has been kind of a thorn is maintenance of the downtown street trees. Because as they get older, they outgrow, the metal breaks, the sidewalks start to lift, it becomes a hazard. And currently, there isn't any one individual city department that's responsible for it. The Community Development Department issues street tree removal permits. The Parks Department does some maintenance, sometimes Public Works does, light and power if it interferes with overhead utility lines. So those roles and responsibilities are being looked at and identifying specific things that each individual department should work on. Under the city's code, it's technically the responsibility of the adjacent property owner to maintain street trees. That works fine in residential neighborhoods, but downtown is different. And so you have individual businesses which come and go, and property owners that are absentee property owners. There's a higher level of design treatment downtown. We have decorative bricks and so forth. The trees are planted downtown. We're funded through a community development block grant back in the 90s. And so there's really no clear tie between the street trees and the individual businesses downtown. So that's being looked at. Should there be cost sharing? Should the city take on that responsibility? How should that work? It's really the street trees at this point that we've been really struggling with in terms of ongoing maintenance. Bryce?
What's it gonna look like to actually close the street? Is there gonna be like physical barriers set in place, or?
Yeah, they're likely, be kind of similar to what's happening if anybody's been near City Hall, the redevelopment that's going on there with the new development services annex, which is replacing the engineering office. It'll be kind of like that, where there'll be barricades. The road will be open at some times and closed other times, just depending on the type of work. So it's intended to be flexible.
What's the general feeling you get from the businesses on 21st Avenue? What kind of feeling do you get from them?
So it's interesting. We've had a number of meetings. It's been a while since we've had one. We had one on 21st Avenue about a year ago now. We've been waiting for the parking study to wrap up so we can reach out again, and that's happening. It's interesting. There's the businesses on 21st Avenue have been skeptical, I guess I'll put it that way, of the improvements. But the businesses on Main Street have been really supportive and see this as a good thing. So there's kind of an interesting dynamic there. I think there's a lot of concern about the impact to parking. So if we can find an amenable solution to that, I think that might help improve the comfort level of the businesses. The other thing is, and the reason why I wanted to point out that the street will not be closed permanently is there is perception out there that that will happen. And that's not the case. That was never the intent of this project. So hopefully, not closing the street permanently will allay some of the business's concerns as well. It's been a mixed bag.
It could be closed temporarily for events. Is that how the plan is? So under what conditions would that come into play? What kind of event would you see closing the streets?
So it'll be, kind of similar to the types of events that happen now. So, first Wednesday, the wine event that's held downtown, some chalk arts. We've also been, had some, not a lot of discussion, but some discussion with the university about events that they host to maybe utilize Main Street. The other thing around the events is also related to parking. managing parking. I think we can do collaboratively much better. We can manage parking much better between the city and the university when events happen, so that vendors are not parking where you want the event attendees to park and that sort of thing. So yes, sir.
Just one thing about street closures, where 21st intersects Main Street, if there's a festival going on, is that intersection closed or is that open?
Yes, it could. To be honest, we haven't really gotten down to that level of detail in terms of the programming. It would really be coordination with the city's fire departments and police departments to make sure that we don't disrupt their response times and putting policy in place to avoid that. So, all work needs to be done on that. So again, I encourage you to take the survey. We'd really love to hear your opinion, and thank you again for allowing me to present the project. And my cards are on the table, so if anybody thinks of anything after the fact, reach out to me. Great.